Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Hold the Mayo. Today's episode is going to be brought to you by a legend in the Christian world who passed away just the other day, Carmen. This episode is going to be a tribute to you today. If you do not know who Carmen is, I encourage you, get on Spotify, get on YouTube, look up Carmen. He is, I was telling somebody just the other day that he was like one of the only musicians, only artists in which like I could listen to and enjoy, and my dad could listen to and enjoy. Me and him, we conflicted when it came to music as a teenager, but yet when it came to Carmen, we enjoyed listening to it. It was one of the only concerts he took me to, and my dad is not a very big music person. Which just goes to show that the level of ministry that Carmen had. Not only that, that man put together some phenomenal concerts, and they were free. And I was just thinking when I heard he passed away, I was just thinking about his music. And here's the reality about Carmen, and I don't want to take too long on this, but his music was kind of corny. I mean, if you go back and listen to it, it is, but his message was awesome. Okay. Here it is for me. I think the reason why I like Carmen so much is because he made the devil not seem so scary. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be aware of the devil and his abilities to do whatever he does, but he reminded me, all his music, his message in his music always reminded me that God was more powerful than any force on this earth. And I think there was one like little sermon music thing where he went to a witch's house and he basically told her the name of Jesus. She has no authority, and she screamed and ran off. And of course, everyone like one of the first things you think of when you hear the name Carmen, Satan, bite the dust, right? And so his music wasn't the best, but his message was always perfect, which goes to show you that it doesn't necessarily mean the method doesn't matter as much as the message does. And Carmen did an incredible job presenting an incredible message. And his method wasn't the best, but it was very good. And so, Carmen, thank you for being a major staple in my life. Man, we're praying for your family. And I can only imagine that the first thing that Jesus said to you whenever you looked eye to eye to him was, "Now, who's in the house?" Carmen, God bless you. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Hold the Mayo. So glad to have you guys here. We're going to continue going through the book of Romans, and we're going to jump right into chapter 7. Maybe a quick recap of what's going on in Romans so far. Paul has been really driving home this idea of law versus grace, and why it is that we don't have to follow the law. The Old Testament, when Israel was founded, God gave them a laundry list full of things they had to do and follow. And Paul's coming in saying, okay, those things are good, but I think you missed the point here when it came to the law, and that's why we now need grace. And that the law, and he starts out in verse 1 of chapter 7 and says, "Do you not know, brothers, for I'm speaking to those who know the law." In other words, he's like, okay, for all you rule followers out there, I'm talking to you right now. The law is binding on a person only as long as he lives. So if we follow the law, if we abide the law, we are under the law until we die. And the reason why that's important to know, that why that's an issue, is because if you go back and read in chapters 5 and 6, the law only pointed out our shortcomings. That was the purpose of the law, was to open our eyes to reality that we are not okay, that we are not good, that we can't earn our way into heaven. There is no checklist that you could put together that you could accomplish on a daily basis successfully, much less put one together, but to put one together that's perfect that you could do successfully to get to heaven. There's nothing. And that was the purpose of the law. The purpose of the law was to open our eyes that we need God. And so God was setting all this up with the founding of the Israel nation, and he completed it through Jesus. Okay? He completes it through Jesus, and through him, we now have grace. So Paul is saying, okay, look, here's your options here. If you want to follow the law, fine, but understand you are bound by the law. And he gives an example. He says, for a married woman is bound by law to her husband while he lives, but if her husband dies, she's released from the law of marriage. Accordingly, she'll be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is free from that law. And if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. Now, let's take a quick sidestep here, because if I just take these verses and just kind of put them aside, it takes out of context of what Paul's trying to say. But there is something that is important that I want to stress just for a quick second here. Kids, all you young people, you single people out there, choose wisely who you marry, okay? Choose wisely, because who you marry, that is who you're supposed to be with. Now, I'll tell you this. I'm not one of those people who feel like that there's that one person out there for you, okay? And Kayla's always like, well, she's always like, that's not romantic. I always we were destined to be together. No, I don't think that's the case. I think you find somebody, you believe you're compatible with that person, you really like being with that person, you're in love with that person, and you make a choice to spend the rest of your life with that person. It is your choice. But when you make that choice, you got to stick with it. Okay? And Paul's using this analogy with the understanding that who you marry, that is who you're with until you die. Matter of fact, part of when you get married, part of the ceremony, you say, until death do us part. Now, I know things like divorce are out there, but God speaks against divorce. He does not want you to get divorced. So be careful. Choose wisely. Okay, do not go out of, just because you're maybe a little bit older and you're desperate and you're scared you're going to be single forever. I'd rather you be 30 or 40 and finally find the right person than to be 20 and marry onto somebody simply because you're afraid of being alone. Because then what happens is, if you get divorced, and the Bible talks a lot about it, you get divorced, and you're doing something that God's against. And marriage is not easy. Okay, I love my wife, and I know she loves me. But there are times where we get on each other's nerves. There are times where it's just like, there are days where she is like, Jason, you need to go do something. Okay, don't you need to go somewhere? I always joke with her. We're driving down the street. I'm like, let me check your car door, see if it still works. And because there's just times where it's like, get away from me. Doesn't mean we don't love each other. It just means that, you're trying to figure out this life together. And so be careful who it is you marry. Make sure that whoever you marry is a godly person. Is a person who's striving to get closer to God, but they also have a passion and a want to see you get closer to God. Okay, so we definitely want to encourage you guys to seek out somebody that is worthy of spending the rest of your life with. So choose wisely, be careful. And I just wanted to kind of share that real quick. So we're going to jump back into what Paul is trying to tell us here. Okay, that when you marry somebody, you are bound to them. That to go and participate in any other relationship while you're married is wrong. And so that's what Paul's trying to say. He's like, look, you're bound to this. You're bound to this. You can't participate in anything else. How can I participate in things of God if I'm bound by the sins that I'm in? And that's why the Bible talks about, there is a classic analogy of a Christian life, that the old passes away. Why? Because what you're saying is that I am no longer bound to the things that the old person was bound to. I'm no longer bound to the chains of sin. I'm no longer bound to these rules. And don't get me wrong, guidelines and rules are good. And I talked about that last week about driving out. When I'm in a car driving down the road, I've got to follow the rules, or I might kill myself if I don't kill somebody else. So rules are good, but I guess the best way I put it is this: is that Paul is trying to break open this new idea that when it comes to God, it's not simply following rules, it's entering into a relationship. The reason why I don't do things like cheat on my wife is because I love my wife. Okay. That's the reason. That's number one reason why I'm in love with my wife. Therefore, I don't allow myself to be tempted, or I don't allow myself to fantasize, or I don't allow myself to entertain the idea of the communication and the time with other women, because I love her, and not because it's some rule we established. It wasn't like on day one she's like, "You can't cheat on me." It's like, well, duh, right? It's a rule we all know and we follow. So we are in this relationship now with God. So Paul says, well, in order to be in this relationship with God, you have to let the old pass away. Okay. Verse 4 says, likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law through the body of Christ. So it's through Christ's death that we are able to die from this burden that's been put on us. That's what the law did. The law put a burden on us, and we were stuck. But then Christ came, and through his death, we received grace. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. Christ died on the cross, and his death, through his death, he defeated death, hell, and the grave. And then when he arose victorious, he didn't hold the trophy high going, I won. No, he held the trophy out and says, you can win too. This is for you too. Anybody who's willing to accept it, it's yours. But part of accepting it means that you accept the death, which means you accept that I am no longer who I was before this moment, because I'm dying out. That part of me, that fleshly part, that sinful part of me, the fleshly desires are being killed off. And now I'm allowing the Holy Spirit to be alive in me, and I'm going to be guided by the Spirit and not by the flesh. Okay? So that you may belong to another, to him that raised the dead, in order that we may bear fruit for God. So here's a couple of things. Let me break this down for you. Again, Christ died on the cross, rose from the dead, and then he made a way where we can participate in that. It's a metaphorical. We're not actually dying, okay? Don't imagine at church people are going to the altar and all of a sudden they're just plopping dead and then they come back to life. We don't have like a machine over there. Clear, he's dead. Okay, now you're alive in Christ. No, it's a spiritual warfare going on, that you are allowing the fleshly side, the desire to do what I want, the desire to do what the world tells me to do, goes away, and now I seek after the things of God. I seek after the things of heaven. But when I do that, I'm no longer bound to earth, but guess what? I'm now binding myself to God. Okay? Now, the things of this earth will always prove to be destructive and bad. But the things of God will always be uplifting, wholesome, and good. Okay? And so, and why is all this? Why does all this happen? Verse 4, at the end of verse 4, it says this, in order that we may bear fruit for God. And that's something that needs to be stressed. As a Christian, it is not simply going to the altar and getting saved and going, whew, I'm going to heaven. I can relax now. No, it's experiencing the salvation, it's experiencing the most incredible experience of your life of having God free you from the chains of sin, freeing you from the burden, the shame, and the guilt. You are set free. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And when you accept Christ, you experience this freedom, not so that you can keep it to yourself, but so that you can tell others. You are bonding yourself to God, therefore you must be obedient to God, and you have to bear fruit. It says Jesus over and over and over again. Go through all the four Gospels. You'll see it where he talks about consistently that we're supposed to go and do. Matter of fact, his last commandment to the disciples was to go and make disciples. We are to go and bear fruit. We are to go and tell others. If we're, as Christians, if we're not telling others about Jesus, we are failing as Christians. It's as simple as that. You must go and bear fruit for God. So far, while we're living in the flesh, our sinful passions aroused by the law were at work in our members to bear fruit for death. But now we are released from the law, having died to that which held us captive, so that we may serve in the new way of the Spirit and not in the old way of the written code. So far, while we were living in the flesh, our sinful passions aroused by the law. Does the law make us more sinful? That's a great question. We're going to dive in that just a minute, but I do have a brief commercial for you. So hold on right there and we'll be right back. Hey guys, Jason here. Real quick, wanted to get some information out to you on March 5th, which is a Friday night coming up in just a few weeks. A number of our boys are going to be doing a rockathon. Now, what is a rockathon? Very simple. They are going from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. rocking in rocking chairs without falling asleep. What we're looking for people to do is pledge, support them by giving a pledge for every hour they can go rocking without falling asleep. If you would like to help them out, you can just leave a comment below. We'll put you on our list. You can always go to perry1ag.org/giving. And when you go to give, if you hit the drop down box, there'll be a section for Speed the Light, because all proceeds will go to Speed the Light. And just put in, give a donation and help support these boys who are trying to raise money. Their goal is to raise $1,000 for Speed the Light that night by just simply rocking in some rocking chairs. We're gonna do our best to try to keep them awake and have some fun and enjoy company. But more important than anything else, we're gonna try to raise some money for Speed the Light. Speed the Light is a youth-based missions giving organization. They focus on giving transportation vehicles. They are even now looking at helping fund buildings and organizations. I know the big thing right now, a lot of organizations are working on sex trafficking, and Speed the Light is helping out in that area too, as well as getting vehicles to missionaries across the sea to help them get to new locations they're desperately needing getting to. Sound equipment, whatever basically missionaries need, Speed the Light is trying to help provide that need for them. And our youth want to help raise money. Our goal this year, I believe, is $5,000, might even be $10,000. I haven't talked to my coordinator yet, but we are looking to try to raise some money, as much money as possible, to help these organizations fight sex trafficking, get missionaries into areas that are in desperate need to hear Jesus, and get the equipment they need so they can present the gospel in a powerful way so that more people get saved. So you can leave a comment saying, I'll sponsor them $1 an hour, $2 an hour, or just go to perry1ag.org/giving, and under the drop-down box, hit Speed the Light and give a donation. We would appreciate any and everything y'all can give to help these boys reach their goal for that weekend, $1,000. Thank you guys so much. God bless. And we're back. So the question was asked, does the law make us more sinful? Well, yeah, it kind of does. It's the keep off the grass mentality, as I like to put it. Have you ever seen a sign that you've seen that told you not to do something, and all of a sudden you were like, I want to do it? I mean, we all have, right? We are a rebellious people. It's the sin that's within us. We have a desire to rebel. I mean, has your parents ever told you to do something or not do something, and you end up doing it or not doing it? Right? I mean, how many of us have ever done that? We've all done that. When all of a sudden we're given a rule to follow, it's like, there's an old saying, rules were made to be broken. That's what Paul says here. The law, all the law did was stir up the sinful passions in us. I mean, because what makes sin so enjoyable and so intoxicating is the ought notness of it. In other words, you shouldn't be doing it. It's the doing something you're not supposed to be doing, the breaking the rule, the getting away with something. It's one thing when I go to Walmart and I go and buy groceries, and it's just whatever, buy the groceries. But if I ever went there and I just kind of loaded up some stuff in my pocket and then I walked out and got away with it, it's like, whoa, And don't get me wrong, I'm not encouraging this. Look, this is not encouraging to do wrong things at all. But that's the reason why. Things that you shouldn't be doing are very exciting, mostly because you shouldn't be doing them. You know you shouldn't be doing them, and you're doing them anyways. It's like, I shouldn't be out this late. I have to sneak in the house, and if you get away with it, like, oh my gosh, I'm a bad person. And we all have that it's in us. And that's what Paul's talking about. It says only the law did was really stir up our sinful passions. And it says the living in the flesh. We're living in the flesh. Every time we were told not to do something, our sinful passions would rise up and we do it. And Paul said, he ends that verse saying, and all it did was produce death. That's all it did. It didn't do any good for you. I don't know anybody who's ever done something they shouldn't be doing and went, I'm so glad I did that thing I shouldn't be doing. I don't know any person who looks back and goes, I'm so glad I cheated on my spouse. I'm so glad I stole that money. I'm so glad that I ran that red light and crashed into somebody. You know, I don't know anybody who's done negative things and I go, man, I'm so glad I did those negative things. Now, don't get me wrong. God can sometimes use those negative things. Someone goes to jail and out of desperation comes to know Christ. Great. But I guarantee that person in the end, it's like, even though I came to know Christ through that process, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't do it. Because we know the things of this world will only produce death. So now we are released from the law. Why? Because we have died of the old flesh. We have died of our old self. We are now coming up as a new creation, children of God. Okay? So that we serve in the new way of the Spirit, not the old way of the written code. Again, it comes down to this. We are no longer following a list of rules just to follow the rules. And you're thinking like, well, Jason, rules are good. Yeah, you're right. Rules are good to have. We have rules in our house. We have rules here. You know, there are rules that we follow. I mentioned earlier, there is a big rule in my marriage. Don't cheat. That's a rule. But it's not, we don't have it written out. Okay. My wife doesn't have to wake up every morning like, Jason, this is just your daily reminder not to cheat on me. No. We serve each other in a new way, not by following rules, but by loving each other. And that's what Paul is talking about. He says, look, we are serving in a new way of the Spirit. In other words, we are embracing God and we are longing to please Him. And pleasing Him means not doing certain things and doing other things. I'll put it this way. Young people out there, you get invited to a party, you know there's going to be drinking at the party, you know there's going to be stuff that you probably shouldn't participate in. And you get invited. Don't tell that person you can't go because God won't let you. Tell them, I'm not going to participate in anything that will displease my God. You see how that's two different things? Because the first one says, I can't go. God won't let me. I'd love to go, but God said no. It's like having a strict parent. In other words, but if you look at the other way, I'm not going to participate in anything that will displease God. And going to that party will not make my God happy. You see how it's different? You see how that it changes everything? And that's kind of what Paul's saying. He says, look, the law kind of puts you under a strict code, and it wasn't pleasing, it wasn't uplifting, it didn't do anything but highlight and put a spotlight on your shortcomings. And all it did was produce death. Because, again, how does Paul know this? Well, because he was once a Pharisee. He was a part of that circle that followed the strict code. And all they were doing was things that were not of God. They lost sight of God. But then he came in contact with Christ, died, and came back to life. And, in a spiritual sense, he killed off the old Saul and became Paul. I mean, he literally became a new person because he went from Saul to Paul, and he began to serve Christ in a loving compassion. Everything he did was out of love for God, not out of some form of strict code of conduct or rules or guidelines. He went and did what he did because he had a passion for God and not because he needed to follow the rules. It wasn't like he was like, guys, I'd love to come over, but God won't let me. No, he's like, guys, I would love to. If you read his books, I would love to come to you, and I'm praying to God He'll allow me to come to you if it's His will. But God's got me going other places, and it's like, man, I'm going where it pleases God the most. And that's where we need to go and be. We're not following rules because we got to follow the rules. We're following rules because we know that we want to please God, and there are certain things that we can't do because they won't please God. If there's anything in your life that you know is not pleasing God, get rid of it. Not because we're trying to make life harder on you, but because those things will only drag you down and produce nothing but death, nothing but harm. And give that empty space to God. Let Him fill it up with His stuff, His things. And I promise you, what He'll bring is so much better than what this world's trying to give you. Guys, I'm praying for you. Thank you so much. We're going to dive even deeper into what all this means next week as we finish chapter 7. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying these. If you are, leave a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, share this video out with your friends, and get the word out of this. We're going to keep going. We're going to see where God leads it. We're praying and believing that God's going to do more through this, and that we're always looking for new creative ideas to make this show better. But in the meantime, guys, y'all have a wonderful rest of the week. God bless you. This is Jason. Thank you for watching Hold the Mayo.